My name is Katerina. I'm on Team 865 WARP7, and welcome to the How to Create Partnerships with Corporate Sponsors presentation. We have a lovely group of panelists today. But first, we're going to start off with a land acknowledgement. And this is something that our school traditionally does every single morning. And although we're not in school full time, we'd still like to continue on with it. We acknowledge that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Now we're going to jump right into introductions. Let's start off with Kate. Do you want to say a few things about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Kate Lally, and I work for TD Bank. I sit within our global corporate citizenship team, the team that brings our TD Ready commitment to life. Personally, I work in colleague engagement. So part of my job is to really, as it suggests, engage our 90,000 colleagues across North America with the work that we do in communities and give them an opportunity to get involved in their communities, learn a little bit more about what the bank is doing, and that kind of thing.
Awesome. Mark?
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Harrison. Probably the most important thing you should know about me is I'm a proud father of a Team 610 Robotics participant who is sorely missing it, as many of you are, and being in grade 12. When I'm not being a proud father, I am the owner and founder of a nearly 27-year-old sponsorship experiential company called the T1 Agency. I also run a global community of sponsorship practitioners with events called Sponsorship X. And last year was very excited to have my first book published, which was called What Sponsors Want. So thanks for being here this afternoon.
Awesome. Chantel?
Hi, everyone. I am Chantel Smith, and I work in marketing partnerships. So I manage a number of partners for the NBA in Canada out of our Toronto office, and work with them on a daily basis to activate and market across the country and bring Canadian fans unique experiences.
Awesome. And Natalie?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Natalie Cutler. I'm the Director of Communications for BWXT's Canada operations, which includes BWXT Nuclear Energy Canada, which is located in the Davenport area of Toronto. I'm responsible for everything from marketing, sponsorships, community engagement, media relations, government relations, and employee communications for our company. And really look forward to being here today to contribute my input on creating meaningful partnerships.
Awesome. Let's get started. We are open to questions, and you're able to send them to the person who is named Ask Questions here, and we'll be answering throughout. But first off, why don't we start with what your personal experiences are creating partnerships with other companies. Natalie?
Yeah, so at BWXT, we're an engineering company predominantly, and but we produce the fuel and the components that help power the province. And we're a nuclear company that supports our nuclear power customers. And as such, we've developed what we call kind of 5 pillars of support for our communities, and they align with the core values of the company. And those include education, particularly STEM, because again, we're an engineering and manufacturing company, as well as the environment, health and wellness, and culture and Indigenous relations. So these are kind of areas that are important to our business for our corporate social responsibilities. And so my experience with developing sponsorships and partnerships really centered around alignment with those pillars. And so if we're contacted by a group for sponsorship, typically the first thing we're looking for is is there an alignment in one of those key areas between their initiative and our core values. And so some examples of key partnerships, of course, one is the robotics program, the first robotics program at Western Technical Commercial School. You know, it being very centered around STEM, a great alignment, just a natural fit. And that also, you know, we'll look at bursaries. So we've had bursaries at several schools, and we typically focus in on either STEM or supporting Indigenous students. And, you know, some other examples, you know, keeping in line with our core values would be partnerships with hospitals. You know, our communities keep our, you know, our residents safe, and as a result, we like to give back. So we'll develop relationships with and support local hospitals, especially during COVID-19. We really tried to do extra where we could. Conservation authorities, you know, supporting local trails and parks. And the two others that are around the STEM field, and this one is kind of a two-parter. Our president is very focused on women in STEM. And so we have started to look at supporting women in STEM, particularly to try to increase the amount of women in science, technology, engineering, and math positions. It's a commitment we've made to do better in our industry, in our company. And so an example of that would be women in nuclear. We've done leadership development program sponsorship with them, and Ontario Tech University, which is that the new name? Yes, Ontario Tech, used to be UOIT. They have a program called Women for STEM. So those are some examples. And, you know, it starts with trying to carve out an area or kind of to kind of create a space that that makes sense, that aligns with our goals and our beliefs and our values. And our employees really get behind that as well. And we love sharing what we do with our employees so that we get the engagement, and we love supporting our local organizations like Western Tech.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. Kate, what about you?
Yeah, so very much like Natalie, over at the bank, we have what we call interconnected drivers of change, and they are the areas where we have strategically decided to kind of focus our efforts in communities. You can read a lot more about the TD Ready commitment online, but very quickly, those drivers of change are financial security, which is no surprise, we're playing there as we are a bank. Vibrant planets, which is my favorite. Connected communities, and better health. And so we create partnerships with organizations in communities who are doing work towards the impact we're looking to see within those drivers of change. I have a set of colleagues who we call granting managers, and they really own the relationships with these organizations. So they accept applications, and they, you know, work with the organizations to see what that kind of partnership is going to look like. Where I come in and where I create a bond with them is on colleague engagement. So this could be, you know, a piece that well, let me start by saying TD is not in the business of kind of writing a check and walking away from these partnerships. We actually look to leverage our human capital, and that's, by saying that, I mean our colleagues across the bank, to actually assist these organizations in ways beyond just, you know, writing that check. And so we look to engage our colleagues through 5 different approaches, and that includes volunteering, giving and fundraising, learning opportunities, shared experiences, and community leadership. And so I work with those organizations to see what they have, what their needs are, what they have available, that we can offer our colleagues to really help them feel connected to the work that TD is doing through the Ready commitment. One in particular that, you know, I feel quite close to is our relationship with an organization called ABC Life Literacy. They do some fantastic work in communities, really hiring literacy levels for adults across Canada. In particular, we have a financial literacy program with them. And our colleagues just lap that up. You can imagine we have loads of folks who feel, you know, connected to this cause, and they also feel like they have the skill set to share. And so colleagues are invited to help deliver these workshops in communities. And we have a little bit of a library of workshops that we've created with ABC Life Literacy that target different segments of our communities. So, you know, I support our colleagues as they look to take on those endeavors with ABC Life Literacy. And it's honestly not very difficult because folks just love doing it. And I think one that you'll all know of, I hope, another one is junior achievement. And so that's another one that colleagues just really love to go out and deliver on a regular basis. Every year they're out delivering, and in particular, we focus on the grade 7 program, Economics for Success, as well as company program where high school students create companies with junior achievement. And so we have lots of volunteers that help deliver that as well. I think I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Kat.
I noticed you have the 5 pillars of the idea of the 5 pillars, like Natalie was saying. What about you, Chantel? Does the MBA do something like that?
No, our approach to partnerships are a little bit different. So in the department that I work in, called Marketing Partnerships, we are actively out in the market, either pitching brands or managing the brands that have already come on board as partners. But one thing that's the same from what Natalie and Kate had mentioned was just finding those common objectives. So for someone like me, when I'm going into a meeting with a brand that's not partnered with us, out of that meeting, I need to understand what are they trying to achieve? How can partnering with the NBA help them further their business, drive their business forward, and help them meet and surpass any objectives they might have? So when, you know, we like to look for partners where there's crossover on objectives. And for example, we have a newer partnership probably just under a year ago with DoorDash. And so DoorDash is massive in the US, but they are fairly new to the Canadian market. So it was advantageous for them to say, hey, how can the NBA help us break through in Canada and speak to a group of people, i.e. Canadian basketball fans, to get them more engaged and ordering more on DoorDash. So when we come to say, hey, this is how many millions of fans are, you know, saying that they're NBA fans, watching NBA games on a weekly, monthly basis. So you have all of these people that may not have heard about DoorDash or ordered from DoorDash, but since you are now a partner of the NBA, they're more likely to want to use your app when they're ordering dinner before they tune into their next basketball game. So we work with them on, you know, little things throughout the season. So we could go as, you know, as simple as sending an email to our database before the Eastern and Western Conference Finals saying, okay, because you're an NBA fan, you get $5 off your order of DoorDash this weekend to celebrate the playoffs. Or right now we're working on a content series with NBA and WNBA players talking about some of their favorite restaurants in Canada to highlight some of the more let's call it like mom and pop, smaller businesses. So like that small business, especially because of this last year with COVID, a lot of restaurants, especially independently owned restaurants, have not been doing as well. So how can the NBA and DoorDash highlight these restaurants, but also showcase Canadian talent? So finding the synergies with both the league as well as our partners to be able to bring either new information and exclusive experiences to fans, but also deliver, help the brand, i.e. DoorDash, deliver on their objectives.
Wow, that's really smart. It's great that you guys are also reaching out to the small businesses. Mark, what about you? What's your personal experiences with creating partnerships with companies?
Thanks, Katarina. So our company works about 3/4 with big brands, as Chantal mentioned. So, our clients are companies such as Nissan, Visa, Dairy Farmers of Canada, and some of their provincial dairy bureaus, like Dairy Farmers of Manitoba, and Alberta, Ontario Lotteries, Maple Leaf, and others, Esso. And what we would do in those cases is looking at different brands and different business lines that the company has and who they want to reach. We would help them actually figure out what organizations they should sponsor and how they should bring that sponsorship to life. I'm a football nut, so I'll use a quick football example, but Nissan's been a long time sponsor of the Canadian Football League, but just putting up your logo isn't enough. So we brought that to life by creating what we call the Titan All-Canadian Game, where we searched for 70 high school football players who excelled on the field, in the classroom, and in the community, and gave them an all-expense-paid trip to the Grey Cup to be put on a red team and a white team, the Titan All-Canadian Game. And the concept there is they meet each other, they have a bonding experience, they get obviously lots of opportunity to meet with pro athletes, but more importantly, they become sort of heroes in their local community. In these COVID times, we're doing a lot of things quite differently. So for example, with Dairy Farmers in Manitoba, we have a very significant B2B program supporting, for example, restaurants and doing more community service work. In addition to that, we also work with a lot of organizations that are seeking sponsorship. We don't sell the sponsorship for them, but we actually design programs to help them generate sponsorship. That has ranged from organizations like Youth Science Canada, if you've ever been to a science fair, to the Red Cross, to CAMH, which is the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And, in these cases, it's all quite varied. One of our charity partners, I can't tell you who, we're actually building out an esports fundraiser right now because charities realize they need to reach a younger audience. That younger audience engages with esports. And so we're actually working with a group of experts that we've compiled from across North America to build up those sort of platforms. So that's a snapshot of what we do. There's 82 people who are doing this work. I'm doing none of it. So I'm condensing it down and making half of it up because they know what they're doing.
Wow. My next prompt was going to be what companies want to hear when you approach them, but I think you guys pretty much covered that. So let's get right into some of the questions. How do we use information found on companies' websites to start conversations about partnerships? Anyone want to volunteer first? Sure, Kate.
I can take that. Yeah, I think that's actually a really important point. So one of the things, Kat, when you had said at the beginning, Natalie and I both have, you noted that Natalie and I both have pillars or drivers that we sort of focus on. I think that's a really important point. And instead of just, throwing out applications for grants like this, like saying, we'll just see what sticks, do a bit of research and really use people's websites to find who is working on focused on an area that you're actually involved in. So in this case, robotics and STEM and whatever else that sort of aligns with that. So putting out really good applications to organizations that are working in that area is probably way more effective than kind of just, having a standard application that you throw out and see what sticks, as I said. So yeah, really using companies' websites and finding out what they're focusing on, and then putting your attention into and your energy into those applications, I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll add to that. One of the things that I really want to emphasize about the sponsorship industry is that I've used this expression before, it really is a people business. And so not to put Chantel on the spot, but because she's
Wait,
here.
what did you just say? You kind of went quiet. It's really about what?
It's a people business.
Oh, yeah.
And not to put you on the spot, but to know you, and you're somebody here who's out as a business development person and a partnership manager, is first and foremost, when Chantel comes into an organization, she's researched not just what the company is interested in, but what the person and what they're talking about. So, because ultimately the first thing that's going to happen is that company's going to judge Chantel and say, will she help my company and will she help me? And Chantel's also going, well, I also know because of speaking engagements or things that you've posted on social. So I think it's really vital to do everything Kate said and then go that extra step, because ultimately the beautiful thing about our business is, unlike advertising where you submit content and it gets put up by Facebook or, on an outdoor billboard, you are joined at the hip in partnership. I think Kate made the comment, we don't just cut a check and walk away. It's so much more than the money. I can't overestimate this comment.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's, even from when I first started in this business, because I started my career in PR and then moved over to partnerships a few years later. And from when I started that till now, it's even changed from, Mark had mentioned like logo slapping, just like, oh yeah, here's a Brink board and now you've got your value, and then changing the mindset of sponsorship versus partnership. Because I, as someone that manages a few different brands for the MBA, so a few different partner brands, is like, I need to know about what's going on in those brands' businesses and their industries, so that as we work through different ideas to activate and come to market, it's all aligning to what their larger goals and other things they're working on. So it's not just a random act or logo slap or something like that. So making sure that you are truly partners. And sometimes I feel like I'm an extension of some of those brands' marketing teams, because we're one facet of their larger company's marketing plans, and just understanding that and being able to know what's going on, from like taking a step back from just looking at, well, what are they doing with the NBA? And that's the only thing that matters, because if you take a wider lens, you'll be more successful with pitching new ideas as well as selling them in.
Yeah. And I think, Mike, you said that it's like a people business, right? You're investing in the people. So do you think that companies are going to have a different kind of view on wanting to sponsor a team if it's cycling through high school students every 4 years?
I'll take that.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
I was going to say, I don't think it's from BWXT's perspective, our interest is in the student moving on and excelling in a career in STEM as a result of having been in, first robotics or Western tech with a bursary, whatever it is that, our interest is in development of people, right? And so as a result, we hope to see new teams every, so often, because it's more about the program. Of course, we get attached to certain team members, right? We get to see them sometimes if we're having an event and we get to invite the team to demonstrate their robot. Of course, we miss them when they move on, but it's more about support for the initiative than specific students, but the program.
And I would add to that, I was fortunate enough about 10 years ago to see, Dean Kamen speak, who's the founder of First Robotics, then have a chat with him afterwards. So you're talking about people, you're buying into him and him being a visionary, and the students who are competing. For me, it's what Natalie mentioned. I look at them as every kid who's participating in robotics is helping make our country better, because they're going to be an innovator. They're going to be a change agent. They're going to do more than, the lazy political science grads did. And so that's what you're really investing in. And so even there, to Natalie's point, those people they are the beauty, they are the asset, but it's not that you have to worry about them moving on. We want them to move on, as Natalie said.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of all these like people connections and stuff, how do you even get your foot in the door with creating a partnership if you don't, say, have already a personal connection through friends or family? How about you, Kate?
Yeah, well, for us, it's a matter of submitting an application. So we have quarterly application rounds. I think it's always sort of open, but they're addressed on a quarterly basis, so 4 times a year. And that is really the only way that that's how we start our relationships and engagement, is through their sort of demonstration of interest through filling in that application.
I'll second that and say that there's not much weight given to a family connection. In fact, we prefer if there's not, because it should be an objective decision based on a good fit between the donor applicant and the donor. So in our case, we don't have as formal as a process as Kate's with an application, and we don't have as frequent of an analysis period as well. We look at and budget and forecast on an annual basis, which, you know, most people understand, you know, commensurate with our budgeting schedule. But you know, it's less about connections, although those can help, and more about fit. So I would say don't let a lack of connection to someone who might work somewhere, don't let that, you know, steal your steam.
There's a question actually specifically for Chantal, and it's, do you recommend that teams customize experiences for brands the way that the NBA did with DoorDash?
Yes, I do. And that's, I think, going back to what everybody has said already today, is just having, like, not having, let's say you don't have a personal connection to someone at the brand you're speaking to. If you have a proposal or pitch that is tailor-made for that brand, and you know, show up to knowing a little bit about what that brand is up to, maybe the people, exactly who you're reaching out to, I think it goes a long way to show the level of detail that you put into the proposal and to the pitch. So, you know, you can't be, it's not an easy process, because you do have to dig a little bit to make sure that you're getting the right information. And even if, you know, there's an initial conversation that you can have with someone to gather a little bit more information, if that's available to you, I recommend it, so that your proposal is rock solid and really hits on, you know, ways that both you and this brand are going to work together. But I do recommend that you don't send out kind of blanket proposals, similar to what Kate had said. Just like make sure you know who you're speaking to and tailor it appropriately.
Yeah, so talking about like that kind of what you can offer to the team, what's your shared value, what kind of things that it's like a good high school robotics team to say about this?
Yeah, I think getting your foot in the door is the hardest part, whether you're a high school robotics team or the NBA, who has millions of fans, or you're a very important charity dealing with social justice, climate, health. It's not easy. And I'm sure Kate and Natalie could probably spend hours telling us how many proposals they have to review, and how many calls, and how many messages, and how many my aunt this and my uncle that. I think there's probably 3 quick things I would suggest. One is you just have to forget about what everybody else says and recognize that at the end of the day, if your team's trying to get sponsorship, just worry about your team. Just worry about your organization. Don't worry if somebody says, oh, they don't do this or they don't do that. And what I mean by that is I think it's really important that you just look at, hey, if you feel you're a good fit with somebody, it will actually come through. Like you'll do your research, you'll listen, you'll get there. And I would say that one of the hardest things for people, and this is hard for high school robotics teams that are rotating over, so I'm talking maybe more to the teachers or the parent advisors, is Kate, I hope you don't mind me saying this, there's a lot of doors into TD Bank, right? And there's a lot of different types of sponsorship. So I think it's important for every company to look, every person look at, where do you fit? Do you fit locally? Some banks still have local funds, some have centralized. Do you fit in donations? Do you fit in sponsorship? Do you fit with their accelerator? Where do you fit? And I would say the last thing is recognize that there is a human being on the other side, and they're not a company. So like companies are filled with humans is probably a better way to say it. So think of yourself. If somebody asks you out on a date and you say no, and you ask them again 3 days later, it's probably going to get worse. So give it some time. Let it breathe, right? This is a dad speaking. Don't be so eager. Treat them with respect. And when it's right for them, they'll put up their hand. But I think it's really important to understand that human element and just realize, it's just, you're going to get 100 no's, but then you're going to find that yes. And that yes is going to help you understand how to get the next partner. It's really, I can't emphasize enough how much it's about that human side. Ultimately, every bank has their criteria and they're not necessarily going to veer from it. But if you forget the fact you're dealing with human beings, you're not going to be successful.
Okay, so in the whole not scaring them away or making them not want to sponsor you, how much should you go about asking for so that you don't immediately have them go, oh no, and shut it down? What about you, Natalie?
Yeah, I'm thinking about your question. I mean, typically, a lot of the requests that we receive is, and what I think works effectively is, some information about the initiative requiring support, and like we've been saying, some sort of reciprocal kind of connection between the applicant and the donor to kind of share value. And one thing that I was just thinking is for applicants for funding or support or partnerships or sponsorships, I think they should keep in mind that, the size of the company may play a role in, for example, our organization is not as large as a TD, for example. And so when we have initiatives to support a certain program, we're not likely to have several versions of that. And it might be a case of trying to first find out, hey, have you ever had a partnership, or have you ever sponsored, and we'll use the robotics as an example, a robotics team or program. I see that you use robotics in your business. Try to research on their website. Do they use robotics? Do they have robots in their manufacturing facility? And maybe starting there to develop a rapport and relationship to then determine, I'd love to explore how we can work together. I'm sure a lot of your employees may have graduated from perhaps a school that I went to that had a program like this. So it's all about connections. And I think taking into account that some companies may already have, a program that is similar to the ask, and like Mark said, be patient and don't be defeated by, I'm sorry that we're already doing something similar, because there's going to be a company that hasn't. I mean, BWXT, I think we started supporting the first robotics program in 2018, and it was like a natural fit, and it just made sense, and we didn't have anything like that before. So there's going to be other companies like that are like, this is great, and it's new. So just I would just say keep looking and try to find the fit. And the size of the company might play a factor in if they've had exposure to that ask before or not.
And on the topic of patience as well, is that each connection you make could open another door. So, you know, like TD might not be able to do it, but Kate might have a friend at BMO that she knows is looking for something like this. And she said, hey, here's a contact for someone, try them. So don't, like, I think Mark and Natalie had both mentioned it about, you know, don't get in your own head and be like, oh, should I not? Because even just one conversation could lead to it might not be that thing, but it could lead to something else.
Okay, so building up this kind of conversation or this rapport with these people, sometimes they'll ask, oh, what do you want to do with the money if we do decide to donate? How detailed should we be with this kind of response?
Pretty detailed, because if you're like, for example, obviously it's a little different, but not too, like the fundamentals are the same. But if someone is saying, here's some dollars to support this initiative, you'll need to show them what value they're getting back. So, you know, especially if it's a partnership, then there needs to be that exchange. So if you say, okay, I'm the NBA going to donate to the robotics team, like robotics team, okay, your logo will be here. You'll have the opportunity to do, you know, table setup in the waiting area. So you should have a good list of what and how the brand will be able to show up at the event, or at, you know, however you guys have envisioned that brand showing up. You should be very clear with what that is and what you need from them.
What do you guys specifically look for if you're reviewing any applications? Because I'm sure you guys get tons of proposals. So is there something that really catches your eye or stands out?
I'll get that to Kate or Natalie, because I'm usually the one asking.
I think, you know, not to be a broken record, but it's first and foremost, it's fit. Does it fall into, you know, the BWXT framework of, you know, sponsorship, charitable giving, and whatnot. But, you know, in addition to that, is it in our snack bracket, right? Like we do have a budget, and sometimes we get asks that are from large organizations that are just not feasible for us to take part in, and the alignment is not there. So, you know, I would say that to Chantal's point, the detail's important. What we're looking for is that detail, so that we can, you know, quickly have, you know, move on either to the next step or politely decline the request. Again, we don't like declining requests, but as you can imagine, we're just not able to grant every request. And so the detail helps with expediting that process, so that, you know, everyone can be productive.
Yeah, and I would just, sorry, if I can just jump in quickly. So I think one thing I'm trying to make sure that my feedback today is appropriate for high school robotics teams, because a lot of what we do is relatively sophisticated. I'm sure the same with Kate and all of us in the panel, relatively sophisticated analysis and criteria. But the one thing I would say, and I'm not trying to suggest this is easy, but human beings, they make decisions emotionally, and they justify their decisions rationally. So you have to remember that, again, you're dealing with a human being. So if, for example, you want to lead your proposal with stats and data, you know, I would say lead with, what's the hope and opportunity? What is the impact? You're catching my attention? Because a lot of times because we have a lot of our corporate clients where we are actually the place where the proposals come. And there are tons of great opportunities, but which one is really going to help that company with their marketing or their employee engagement or their community support? and make them proud and make them feel like this is a place to be. And I think you really need to pitch that. And yes, you need the detail, but I think you got to remember that nobody makes a decision based on detail. They make a decision because they want to. And I get there's criteria and I know all that, but ultimately I've gone down the path enough times with our clients where we're like, at the moment of, we've got 5 things that are all on paper equal. Where do you go? This is going to help make Canada a better place to live. If that's your emotional driver.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. I mean, just the only other point, you know, when I'm thinking about, say, you're in the situation that Merck's just drawn where there are 5 equal, you know, stories or impacts, like put the effort and make sure yours is actually the best application as well. So answer the questions that are there. I mean, again, I'm not in the business of reviewing applications, but I know for sure, say we got 3,000 per quarter. There are some that are done poorly and rushed. And again, if you're not answering the questions and you're not putting the effort into the actual application, it doesn't give a sense of, you know, commitment to what you're actually doing. And so to then have a company hand you over some money to do that is less likely. So, you know, put the effort in. I sound like a broken record now. I've said that a few times, but really answer the right questions and play to what you know about that company. So again, what impact are they looking to make? What are their goals? And you can find that for almost any one organization in their corporate social responsibility reports that most companies have every year. So really do your research and play to that in the applications.
So for anyone who has had experience reviewing these, like Mark was saying, it's a very emotional process. Have you ever read an application where you're like, wow, this is something that's really, I'm connected to, this is something that I need to invest in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
on the range of emotions, to Kate's point, having an incomplete application is aggravating. So now you've irritated me. So make it easy for people. Like that's an emotion. Like you are easy to work with. You know, it's like the rule of hiring. The number 1 rule of hiring is, can I go on a 5-hour car ride with you? I'll worry about your skills later. If I can only go for an hour and a half, I'm leaving you on the side of the 401. And the same thing with that application. Like to Kate's point, I'm sure they're like, we put the questions on the website. Why can't they fill them out? That's an emotion. So I started to belabor it, but you have to understand, like, people think they're dealing with a bank, they're dealing with human beings.
Yeah, and I think really important as well is we're making it sound scary, but to remember that for the most part, your high school students, you might have some support from some parents and teachers. But when organizations, charitable organizations contact us, they are professional grant fundraisers. They're doing this, they're trained in this, they've got lots of experience. And so, you know, go easy on yourselves, and maybe even it could even be worth looking up and researching how to write a good grant application, right? Because I think there's a bit of an art to that as well.
Okay, here's another question. What if we're a small team from a rural location and we don't have any technology or manufacturing companies in our area to sell ourselves as? How do we make ourselves interesting to big companies in the cities?
I might just add that I don't know if you should, I don't think that small organizations in a community should be discounted as potential supporters. I know that in some cases the robots will, you know, feature a logo, and yes, it's nice to have the Googles and, you know, TD and NBA on there at BWXT. But, you know, I think there are a lot of local, maybe small businesses that want to demonstrate that they're supporting students, STEM. Maybe they're startups, maybe they're just new, and they want that exposure. So, and they could be quite generous. So I think, you know, don't just look at the mega corporations with the big fancy logos, because there's a lot of potentially, like you said, rural or local organizations that may be really needing that connection. So I'll just add that.
I'm from Aurelia, so I'm gonna, to the question of being from a big city. So here's the easy answer. If there's a robotics team in Aurelia watching this, you find somebody who's from Aurelia. And the beautiful thing about the internet is you can find that out in 2 minutes.
Okay.
That's after I applied for a job with Kate, because I'm wearing TD green today. It's not quite your green, but it's close. Sorry, Natalie, didn't know what your colors were.
Red and gray.
All right, give me a minute.
You're good. You're good.
Where's the red and blue and white too? Like you completely cut Natalie and I off.
I know you.
I'm just in gray, so I didn't even help myself.
No, all good.
Next up is a question for Kate. Would a large company like TD consider supporting one single robotics team, or would they more likely be able to sponsor the first organization as a whole?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think from what some preliminary conversations we had, Kat, I think, it might disappoint you to hear that. Yes, as a large bank, I sit on an enterprise-wide team. So we're, national, North American, we're looking at sort of the big picture. But as Mark has already mentioned, there are multiple doors into TD that we don't control. So this is off the record, but I mean, from a central pool and a central place and the enterprise initiatives, we're very, very unlikely to sponsor a school. First Robotics would be more aligned, an organization would be more aligned with our traditional giving. But having said that, there are, executives or people's kids who are on these teams who probably, make an ask within their business lines that, again, we have no control over. There are, community banking managers. So across Canada, there are folks who give on a much more regional level. I can see them probably focusing on the charitable organization as well, but I mean, you never know. So again, but to Natalie's point, I don't think that should be discounted. And I think, I understand that you guys are looking for sustainable, ongoing relationships that don't rely on parents and people they know sort of working in a organization. But I think, when it comes down to the team level, that is quite a likely way that you will get the funding, and it's more work for you, and it's, not permanent because there's graduations and whatnot. But again, it's money that will help you, and you'll have it for the time being. And so I think, from my point of view, that's always going to be an important source of income for these teams.
Okay.
Got a step
building
further.
on this.
Can I just jump in?
There's just, oh yeah, sure.
So to Kate's point, I have a good friend who worked at TD, and he's an investment advisor. So he has his own business within TD, and it's about 9 years old. And he's Portuguese. So when the Federation of the Portuguese Canadian Business Association pitches him, he has his own budget to sponsor. And odds are pretty high that Kate doesn't even know he's doing that, because there's how many thousand employees work at TD, Kate?
90,000 plus.
How many?
90,000.
So I grew up in a town of 28,000. So that's 3 of my hometowns plus another high school, university football stadium. So a lot of people.
Yep.
So do individual branches of, say, TD Bank have the ability to sponsor teams, or?
I believe they do. We have a program called TD Play, and it's really down to the sort of branch manager's discretion. They've got a bit of pocket money for the year type thing to focus on really local things like this. So all the branch managers are going to be emailing me now saying, what have you done? But there's, certain time of the year where that pocket money is probably long gone. But again, I think they're at the branch level, there's a small amount of money to be had.
So you're saying seasonal. What's the best time of the year to ask for money?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. Sorry, I'm not, I think it's probably different for, how the regions sort of delegate. So I don't think it's the same for any one branch.
What about you guys? What's the best time for people requesting money?
Well, for me, we do forecasting every fall, so between September and December. So ahead of that for sure, because what we end up doing is trying to take requests that we have and determine if they fit and forecast for them. And then there's an approval process, of course. So that doesn't necessarily mean that because it's it's gone in that it's a slam dunk. But for us, because it's in the annual process, it happens to be for us in the fall. But I imagine everyone's fiscal calendar might be slightly different. So, but that's the case for us.
I can just tell you statistically, we've run a piece of research for 13 years called the Canadian Sponsorship Landscape Study. So this deals with big partnerships, and almost 70% of decisions are made from September to November. But there's year-round process, and that's for your classic sponsorships.
That's interesting. Okay. We're just about ready to finish up. Does anyone have any final remarks or things that you want to say that haven't fit into any of the questions? No? Last call for questions? No?
I mean, I would just say, going back to the comments that you've heard, if somebody asks you to fill out a form, fill it out completely, make it perfect, right?
Proofread it.
Yeah, thank you. I use an app called Grammarly for all my emails because I'm really bad at proofreading.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for what you've done. Is there any way, sorry, I'm just trying to look here. Is there any way that you guys would be willing to provide resources? Oh, sorry. There's one last question that just came in. What's the best advice for initially starting the contact with a company?
I think probably for initially starting contact with the company. Is that the question for how to do that?
This one's to Chantel, actually.
Oh, Chantel, sorry.
They're just typing as I'm reading.
I would say, obviously it's tough sometimes to get people's email address, but if and some of my colleagues, we use LinkedIn a lot, as well as going on websites and just, good old fashioned picking up the phone and calling. You might not have direct lines, but I know that, when somebody calls me, it's almost like, oh, wow, like no one ever calls anymore. It's actually kind of nice to hear a human voice and not just like, go through the stacks of emails that everybody has. So, and it's also a way not to get lost. Even if it's just like, hey, would love to get in touch. I'm not here to, sit on the phone for 30 minutes because then it's, finding that balance, but would love to be in touch and schedule time or send you an email with the proposal. I think are two ways to be noticed, because it's like, yeah, I'm absolutely going to remember somebody that called me versus just like, honestly, another email to read.
So would you also prefer someone mailing in a physical letter to that to stand out?
Me personally, no, just because I don't know like where to get mail. But others might feel differently. But I know that we might have a few more questions. I do have to jump. I'm really sorry.
Okay.
I have another meeting at 5, but this was really fun, and I wish everybody a ton of luck. And like everybody said, just be diligent and remember you're working with humans and proofread. Thank you for including me today.
Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, I think we're going to end that now. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Really helpful.
Good luck, everyone.
Good job.
Thanks for having us. Bye-bye. Good luck.